welcome to our live YouTube training. And I am solo again today. I wasn't sure if Levi was going to make a cameo here, but he is in Hawaii today. I believe he speaks this afternoon. And so I am running solo again today. So I'm here to answer your questions about YouTube, about video editing, anything related to YouTube for real estate. So I'm going to pop into our chat today. Now, I did not see any video, any channels that were submitted for review on our event on Facebook. So for those of you who want to do that for the future, we do channel reviews from time to time. We probably won't do any today since we didn't see any that were submitted. But if you do want to submit your channel for a channel review, then you want to pop that into our actual event. So if you go into our Facebook and you see the event page, you can click on it and it has its own thread. So you'll want to just copy and paste a link directly to your channel so that we can check it out, and we'll go through and check it out for you. So today, let's just go through. People are starting to pop in here. While we're kind of waiting for people to populate here, let's just talk a little bit more about keywords. We've had a few questions around keywords and around the use of TubeBuddy and how to best maximize your reach through the keyword tools in YouTube. So TubeBuddy, for those of you who are new or who haven't been around for very long on this channel, we use TubeBuddy for pretty much everything. And I have questions a lot about like whether or not people should use vidIQ versus TubeBuddy. And that's actually, let's address that first, because I swear I get that question at least 3 or 4 times a week. So vidIQ, I love vidIQ. However, it's not what I consider the best ranking tool when you compare it to TubeBuddy. TubeBuddy is what we like to use as kind of the king of ranking tool, if you will. I go into that and that's my final word. So whenever it comes to going and doing the keyword research and things like that, I always start and end with TubeBuddy. So TubeBuddy is a tool that you can use on your YouTube channel. It's just a Chrome extension that you get. You will have to purchase it on their website if you want to use like their A/B testing or anything along those lines. But basically, it's a really great way to pop in and start looking through keywords in your area and relevant search terms in your area. It will give you an idea of an overall score, but the most important feature of that TubeBuddy search is actually the amount of traffic, the traffic volume that you're going to get from that keyword and that particular keyword. So I usually like to start with TubeBuddy, because TubeBuddy will give you a bunch of suggestions and things like that. So on the right-hand side in the Keyword Explorer tool, you'll go in, you'll search your main keyword that you're looking at. And then if you don't feel like that has very good rankings or you'd like to explore some more keywords that are related to that, on the right-hand side towards the bottom, you're going to see a bunch of keyword suggestions, and you can start looking at the traffic volume with those as well. So I usually start with TubeBuddy just because, again, it gives you a really good kind of a litmus test for where to start. And then as we start optimizing the video, I like to pull in vidIQ as well, especially for a smaller community. If you find in a smaller community, sometimes it's hard to find any keywords that are ranking, right? Maybe your main keyword doesn't even have any relevant search volume. Or it'll say insufficient data, meaning that there's just not enough search volume to really report. So in those cases, I'd like to go into vidIQ just because vidIQ, it kind of pulls from, it feels like it pulls from different sources, because I rarely run into a bunch of overlapping keywords with vidIQ when it comes down to really niching down. And so I'll find some unique ideas from vidIQ as well. And I'll usually use those in the tag section towards the bottom of the tags, just to get us close to that 500 character mark. So that's what I would use vidIQ for. I would use it as a supplementary tool. I would not use it as your primary tool. TubeBuddy, as a rule of thumb, is going to be more accurate than vidIQ is going to be. However, some people use vidIQ and they absolutely love it. So ultimately, if it comes down to this, it comes down to making sure that your SEO is solid by using relevant keywords that have search volume. If you find that on vidIQ, awesome. Like I said, I think TubeBuddy is more accurate, but that's just my own personal opinion. So that we can kind of go with that. All right. And then let's talk a little bit more about keywords too, because I feel like sometimes keywords can be a little bit of, there's a bit of an art and a bit of a science to it. On paper, what we teach you in the course especially is we teach you to start with a basic keyword, a short tail keyword, and kind of work your way out from there. But you also kind of have to get in the mind of the consumer, right? You have to get in the mind of the person who's searching, because sometimes if you just go based on what TubeBuddy actually gives you to go off of, you miss out on some pretty big search terms. So anytime that, especially when you're coming up with like the title of your channel, or if you're trying to come up with a title for a video that's really catchy, I would really sit down and try to think of I would think of 3 to 5 major keywords that are short tail in nature. And I would go through and do a full exploration on all of those and find, 10 to 15 keywords around those one major keywords. That's going to help you come up with better ideas and better topics. Another thing that you're definitely going to want to do is definitely use the split testing option. Split testing is really great. And for those of you who are kind of new to the marketing scene and aren't familiar with the term split testing, all that means is basically testing one version of something against another version of something. We call it A/B testing all of the time. Split testing, A/B testing, they're synonymous. And so you can do this on a couple of different levels with TubeBuddy. And this is why we love TubeBuddy, by the way, versus vidIQ. It has some extra split testing options that I feel like are more powerful. So the first thing that you're going to want to test, you're going to want to start with your thumbnail. Your thumbnail is going to be the #1 contributor to why people click on your video. Obviously, your overall ranking is going to help it show up and stuff. But when it comes to YouTube search and people actually finding you, if it's against you and the next guy for the same keyword, they're definitely going to choose you based on the thumbnail, not the title. So that's the first thing you're going to want to test. The second thing to test if you feel like a video is underperforming is the header or the headline, the title of your video, if you will. That is something that you can easily switch up. And again, I would make sure that every single headline, every single title that you use, it needs to be keyword centric. So, as fun as it is to come up with, kind of fun clickbaity titles, I would, again, make sure that your main keywords are in there and build around it. Don't do it the opposite way. If you try to make it clickbaity and fun and then, add a few keywords at the end, that's when your headline is less effective. So definitely work from that way out. The third thing that you can do is you can test the description and the tags and things like that. Now, that's really getting deep into the metadata. And historically, from our perspective, most of the time, the description doesn't really make that big of a difference. Really, the main differentiators for people, the main thing that really pulls people into your video is going to be the thumbnail and your headline or the title of your video. So I would test those two things. Now, there's something to be said about split testing, though, and this is where a lot of people make a mistake with A/B testing, is that they try to test everything at once, right? So let's just take a little trip back into junior high, right, or high school. In science, we always talk about a control, right? And for a true test, you have to have a control item. Otherwise, you don't know what actually contributed to the change. So now that we're back in our middle school seats and we're reliving that trauma, just think about what you actually want to do with your test. If you have 2 different contributors, you actually don't really know which one is actually the one that made the difference for you. So you never want to do the headline and the thumbnail at the same time. You're going to want to test the thumbnail against itself. Let that go for a few days. See if there's any significant differences. You can either let that test complete, or you can go back and you can do, just stop it midway if you see that there's enough of a difference. There have been times for us that we've seen, especially with the thumbnail title or the thumbnail image, we'll redo that and we'll see that there's like a 6% difference between the first one that we did and the second one we did within like 3 days. And in that case, it's going to be pretty difficult for the other one to outperform. So we just end the test from there. After you've concluded a test, feel free to start another one, and you can do that on the headline. And so that's what I would do, is rather than doing them at the same time so that there's no confusion on what actually caused the change, you only do one item at a time and you have a control in place. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. A/B testing is really powerful. And if you're not using it on your channel, I would definitely recommend doing that. Again, I would start with thumbnails. Headlines, they are impactful, and we have seen changes with that. I tend to see a little bit less of a gap between, changing headlines versus changing thumbnails. I've found that the thumbnail is way more impactful than just changing the header, but that's a good second place to go if you feel like you still want to improve the video. And then, of course, you can go down to all the way down to the metadata, way down into the description. But generally speaking, that's going to be less effective than, going with the thumbnail. Okay, great. So we've got a few questions coming in here. How do I change my name to Agent in Denver as my name on this message? Oh, yeah, we can change that for you. We have access to your channel, and so we'll do that change. But all you need to do is go to the settings, and you'll go into the About section in your settings. You'll need to go to YouTube Studio to do that, and then you can change that. You can change your handle. You can change your About section. You can change the name of your channel. All of that stuff is in the settings in the About section. Okay, let's bring this question up. The A/B testing is only available in the higher subscription, correct? I have the paid version, but not the one with access to A/B testing, correct? So I would definitely get the Legend license. Now, we do have a coupon code for that. I believe that the code is Andrew's Buddy. So if you decided to use that, it does give you a little bit of a discount on the monthly fee on that. So I definitely would take advantage of the A/B testing feature. Now, A/B testing, one thing that I have seen with A/B testing is that sometimes people try to use it a little bit too early in the process too. So don't make that mistake either. Sometimes what it is good for you to do, especially if you're first starting out with your channel and you don't really have a whole lot of search history, you haven't been on the internet for very long with your channel, I would give it 30 to 60 days before you start the split testing process. And the reason why is because, again, we're going back to that concept of having a control in place. It's really difficult for YouTube to give you a really good audience if it doesn't know what does work and what doesn't work within its own algorithm. So I feel like overall, you kind of have to build a baseline for yourself before you start doing the testing. So I'd say 30 to 60 days, I would give it a little bit of time before you start the split testing process. But once you have a little bit of search data coming in, you have some activity on the channel, then I would say split testing is a fantastic way to just make things better on your channel. I have a question about Google My Business. Can I have one page for my living in Austin, Texas, and another one under Sherry East Hagen Realtor? Yes, I believe that you can do that. I think the main thing now, Google does have some stipulations around LLCs and locations. And so if you're trying to verify a location, they will probably have an issue with you having it at the same location. So if they're in completely different locations and like the address that you're trying to use to verify the Google My Business page is different, then you're not going to run into problems with that. It usually we see problems around getting it verified if it's using the same address, because yeah, they will ding you for that. Let's see. Susan here. Can you please post the coupon code in the chat? Yep, absolutely. I believe that it's Andrew's Buddy. We'll see if people understand what that is. People who come in late, it'll be like an inside joke because no one will know what the heck I'm talking about. Cool. Yeah. So any questions about, I know that there have been some people that are new into the program, and we had some really fantastic questions come in our course call, which, by the way, if you are not attending our course call, that is actually with me every week. So we go over some of the things in the modules, clarify things that you're having struggles with, help you come up with better ideas for your video topics and unique ideas to find content ideas. We talk about pretty much everything. One of the things that has been brought up in one of our course calls recently is actually for people who have been doing this process for a little bit of time. They're looking to branch out a little bit and try some new content ideas. And the concern is, if you do the vlogs and you do the maps and the pros and cons, what if you run out of content, right? That's like one of the first questions I get asked by people when they first get started. They get nervous that they're going to run out of content. So one of the really great suggestions that I've given in the past that I feel like has been very successful for people is going into your own comment section. So if you've been on the internet for a while, or on YouTube for a while with your channel, you've got a little bit of channel history there. Then going into your comment section is going to reveal quite a bit. And this kind of goes back to the concept that we used to do, early in my marketing career. One of the things that was suggested is to go to Amazon reviews. Go see what people are talking about in the Amazon reviews. You could still do that if you wanted to. Now, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because it's all based on local SEO and local data. But, the concept of going into a comment section and seeing what people are talking about, it's like the easiest possible way for you to find out what people are searching for. It's the same concept as some people, some marketers, they like live on Reddit, right? They go into Reddit and that's where they spend a ton of their time is looking for concepts and comments in the comment section there, seeing what people are looking for. So do the same thing for your channel, and then also go to your competitors' channels. If you have people in the community or people that are nearby to your community, maybe not necessarily your city, but maybe someone in the local, like if you're in a California city and maybe a city up that you don't service, go check out their channel. What are people talking about? What are people concerned about? Look especially for the negative comments. And this is when I can't stress this enough. Negative comments are a gold mine for content ideas. If you see that someone's complaining about something, you should definitely make a video about that where you turn that around to be a positive, and two, that you make a thumbnail that looks all doom and gloom, because for some reason, those negative content ideas, they go viral, mini viral, like what we like to say on YouTube. a really great example is we did market crash. Is the market crashing in Dallas, Texas? That was a very, very popular video on our channel. And we really rode that wave for a while with that video. We saw that a lot of market crash videos start to pop up around the same time that we were doing it. And so we can tell that that was a very big concern for people. Interest rates was another one that we did. Now, that's a really good example of some of those topics that we kind of tell people to shy away from on a regular basis, but they're outlier topics that can still be made evergreen. We talked a little bit about this, I believe. I want to say now, of course, I'm losing all track of space and time because where does the time go, right? We're already in February. Cannot believe it. But I believe that we talked about this last week, where you can turn a negative topic into a positive topic. That's what I would recommend doing with a lot of the material that you see. Like if somebody is complaining about, for instance, I'm trying to think back to one of our negative comments that we had. I believe that it was one about bugs. There was one video. It was a pros and cons of living in a certain area. It may have been the pros and cons of Dallas, actually. But they were talking about, I'm so glad I left Dallas. All those bugs, I couldn't even handle the bugs. And I just absolutely hated Dallas. I'm so glad I left. Well, the first thing that Levi did was he responded to the comment, because any engagement is good engagement, right? So he responded to the comment itself. That helped our video get pushed out even more. And then he also came back, and I believe he did a follow-up video that he involved that particular con in a future pros and cons video. And so he talked about, well, if you're close to the lake, you're going to probably have a problem with bugs more often than not. I think it was mosquitoes in particular. You're going to have more problems closer to the lake, but there's a ton of services that can also take care of that. That's very standard here in Dallas, that, we have people who spray for bugs and blah, blah, blah. So he turned it into a positive and made it a talking point in another type of a video. Well, maybe a comment it's a jumping off point rather than an entire video topic, but it will give you content ideas. So I would recommend doing that. The next thing I would start to think about is you're starting to feel like you're running out of topics is go back to some of the cities that you did and do it in a different season. For instance, we did a Frisco, Texas vlog really early in the channel's history, and it was during the Christmas time. And so it was great because he was driving through these communities where all these massive houses were decked out with, Christmas stuff. And it really was very, very beautiful, but everything was dead, right? Everything was really dead. And he wanted to kind of bring in more lively energy to it. And so he redid that kind of towards the end of the summer when everything was green. He went and he kind of highlighted some of the recreational areas and things like that. So doing it in another season is really important because, again, we're trying to give people a full picture of what to expect when they move to these areas. And if you can do that in all seasons, you're obviously the authority. If you have it in all seasons, people want to see that. Another thing to do, dive down on price points. 400, 600, 800, $1 million. What can you get in this community for this amount? You can usually find now, I will give you a good example of where you can't find $1 million homes, and that's in Northwest Georgia where I'm at. Northwest Georgia, it's really difficult to find $1 million homes. If you do find $1 million homes, it's mostly land. And so you may not be able to find $1 million home in your community, but that could also be the standard for your community. So say that you're down in the Tampa area, in the Tampa area, $1 million homes are a dime a dozen, right? You find them everywhere. They're all over the place. And so maybe your starting point is $1 million home. What can you find for $1 million? What can you find for 2, 3, 4, 5? So break down into price points. You'll be surprised how much traffic you get from some of those price point videos. They're just as good as any vlog because a lot of times people are looking for a specific price point, before they've even been pre-approved for something. So it definitely will catch somebody who's getting ready to get started in that buying process. Okay, we got a few more questions coming in. I have a question about the name of my channel. I live and work in Northern Virginia, 30 minutes east of Washington, D.C. I'm not licensed in D.C. On TubeBuddy, living in Northern Virginia, I got a score of 29, whereas living in the greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan got 100. My issue is I do not plan on getting my license in the Washington, D.C. anytime soon. Great question. So first of all, I have to address the score because score is good to kind of keep your eyeball on, but more importantly, what does the traffic volume look like on that? Second thing is if you are not planning on working in that area, I would not name your channel after that. And so I would only I'd only name your channel or do videos on areas that you want to work or that you're willing to, refer out to. That's also something to keep in mind. Are you willing to refer out for that? If you are willing to refer out for that, you may still want to go and do videos there. It's just a matter of whether or not you want to service that area and if you anticipate being in that community a lot when you're filming. Kind of depends on your goals. That being said, living in Northern Virginia, I would be curious to see, more about, your community and maybe the cities. I would break it down. Sometimes Northern Virginia, it all gets lumped into one community. And, I don't live there, so I don't 100% know the community, but I do know that, there's a lot of other cities in that community. So maybe break it down, go check out some of the other cities and maybe do the second biggest city next to Washington, D.C. That's in your direct service area. So I would consider doing that before I try to do the Washington, D.C. route, just because, again, it sounds like you're wanting to service that yourself. And if you don't want to get your license, then that is going to be a little bit misleading, even though it will bring in some of the traffic. Now, that being said, that's not to say that we can't use those tags in your description and in your tag section, especially your tag section. That's a great place to throw some keywords in there that have relevance, but are not necessarily, targeting people who only want to live in that area. Some people, they're going to search the Washington, D.C. area, but they don't want to live in that metropolitan area. They're just looking for communities in the direct area, right? So using that in your tags will kind of draw in some of that secondary traffic, but it won't make that the primary focus, and it won't lead people to believe that that's where you're planning on doing your service area. So I would kind of look at some of the cities in your community, maybe the biggest city that you service, your number one city that you sell the most real estate in, kind of start from there and then see what TubeBuddy suggests in their scores as well. But again, I would not get hung up on the score. Sometimes you're going to get a 29 for your community, and just because it's a smaller community. Now you're going to get, just looking at the name that you said, living in the greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan, I guarantee you no one's searching that exact keyword. I would go in there and see what the traffic volume actually says. It may have 100%. And this is actually something we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Just because a score gets 100% does not mean that it's a good search term. It just means that there's certain criteria that it just met at that perfect middle ground. One of the things that you have to look at is competition. There may be zero competition for that because there's zero search volume. So if you have zero competition, then that's a positive thing in the eyes of TubeBuddy, right? So all of that weighed against each other. It may be a horrible keyword, but everything just aligned perfectly to give you a 100% score. So the score is good to kind of have as a secondary tool to kind of decide whether or not you want to use that keyword. But ultimately, it comes down to search volume. And if there's no search volume, then you don't want to use that keyword. Does that make sense? Sorry, I tend to talk really fast. And I've said this before. I talk really fast. So if you're like, Krissy, please slow down. Feel free to tell me in the comment section. I do talk fast. So, okay. Northern Virginia's metropolitan Washington, D.C. Yeah, I probably would not use the Metro Washington, D.C. area just because ultimately it's going to add just a very nominal amount to your search volume, just because the title really is not that big of an indicator for traffic per se. It's going to really come down to your videos, but you just also don't want to mislead people into thinking that you work that area when you don't, unless, of course, part of your strategy is to outsource or not outsource, but to hand out leads to somebody else who can handle them and take a commission on that. Depends on your goals. I would kind of think about that in terms of if you are looking to maybe give out leads and you're not really wanting to work the area, but you want to take all the leads and you want to just give that to somebody else to do. Washington metropolitan area could be good. Just again, it depends on the actual search volume for that keyword. I would just be curious to see what that looks like versus the score. When you talk about Amazon reviews, can you break down what you're looking at? Location, real estate market. Yeah, so Amazon, I use that kind of more as an example. We used to use that in marketing back in the day. When I first started my marketing career, I worked with products. Physical products. And a lot of times what we would do is we would go in or books. I did a lot of work with coaches, early in my career, helped a lot of coaches rank on Facebook and all of those different platforms, Facebook and LinkedIn and things like that. And one of the things that we would do is we would go in and look at relevant topics. And so as far as, for real estate, it might not be as relevant, but I use that kind of as an example because that was early on, that's what a lot of marketers were using, was seeing, oh, well, what are people in the health industry talking about? So they'd go to the comment section and see, well, this book was great about this stuff, but I really wish it would have talked about this. if people are asking more about, vegan recipes, and this recipe book on fitness doesn't have enough vegan recipes or vegan options for bodybuilders, that's a gap in the market. And so we would basically create advertisements around that type of thing, or try to find, ways to fill that gap. And so that's what I mean by going in and using the Amazon reviews as an example. We want to do the same thing on YouTube by going over to other channels. Where are the gaps in the market? Where are the things that we're not fulfilling on this channel that we can fill that gap in? And so that's what I meant. I meant it more as an example. I wouldn't really recommend going to Amazon reviews, just because, again, we're in a local SEO situation. And so it's a little bit more difficult to find things like that on Amazon. But I mean, I guess if you could find a book on moving to Salt Lake City, Utah, and there's reviews for it, then maybe that would be relevant. But yeah, it just kind of depends. You just want to look for relevant competitors, relevant complementary channels, and just reading the comment section to see what's going on and where we can fill those gaps. Okay, let's go back. I'm definitely willing to refer out. I'm on a team members like, okay, great. Well, yeah, in that case, you may want to go with that title. Then again, I would just go back and double check to make sure that particular, because that's a very long tail keyword. So I'm not 100% sure what the traffic volume looks like on that. But if it has good traffic volume and you're willing to refer out, go for it. I think that's great. You'll definitely get a little bit of an extra boost from that. Like I said, ultimately your channel title is not the most important thing. It will bring in a little bit extra, but it usually takes a little bit longer for that to gain some steam. You're probably looking at that really being relevant and helpful in about a year. That's how it worked out for us. The videos themselves are going to help you rank quickly, but you'll rank for the videos rather than the channel. Yeah, and about the traffic volume, it's one of the last stats that you'll see when you're doing the Keyword Explorer. It will tell you how many people are actually searching for that on a monthly basis. So it's going to say monthly search volume when you look at that stat. So it's usually underneath the score. You'll see your scoring features, you'll see your overall score, and then you'll see your traffic volume towards the bottom of that screen. So yeah, you'll just want to make sure that there's actually some search volume for that particular keyword. But yeah, I think that's a decent channel name if you do plan on, referring some work out. Yeah, search volume, traffic volume, same thing. Synonymous. Where can I get drone footage of my area of hot springs? Well, you can sometimes find it in depositories. There's several depositories out there. If you search on Google, you may be able to find something for hot springs. It kind of depends on how big your area is. I'm not super familiar with hot springs in Arkansas, it looks like. But it's very possible that there is some out there for it. So I would start first with, like story blocks, or I'm trying to think of another one that we have. I swear every time I tell myself I'm going to remember to ask Alex. Our videographer, Alex, also has a depository that he pulls from. I'll have to ask him where to get that. But I would just do a Google search for your city and your state and look for drone footage there. Adobe stock will sometimes have some good shots. They are a little bit more expensive though. You're looking like 60 to 80 bucks a clip sometimes, depending on how good the clip is. But yeah, you can find them in different places. There's no guarantee. If you're in a very small community, I would probably guess that you're not going to have any drone footage for that area. You may have some now there. This is a really good example. We have somebody in the editing program that they're in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and they're in a really small town. But the Blue Ridge Mountains, they have some drone footage for the Blue Ridge Mountains because that's a little bit more famous. And so you may have some type of, atmospheric shots, some nature shots from an area that's nearby or a major landmark. But yeah, that I would just do a Google search for that and see if you can find it, depending on how big your area is. I'm not seeing any numbers beside the search volume section of TubeBuddy, but I do see a color spectrum. Should I see a number? Yeah, you should see a number. Now, the Keyword Explorer, now you need to be on YouTube. That's something that confuses people sometimes. It's actually when you're on YouTube using the Keyword Explorer, that's when you're going to see that. It's a little pop-up box that comes up on your YouTube channel, and it will give you the overall score. It will give you all the different ranking factors, and then the last, I think it's the last stat underneath is traffic volume. And then you'll have all of your keyword suggestions on the right hand side and a bunch of other little buttons you can click and dive into more stats on. But yeah, that's where you're going to find it. It's actually on your YouTube channels where you'll see that. Thank you. And sorry about the typo. Oh, I didn't even notice. Let's see. Yes. And this is a great suggestion. Get your drone license and take your own. That's what I did. Yep. drones are pretty cheap, and getting licensed to be a drone, a commercial, to be able to take commercial drone footage is really not that difficult. So I would definitely do that. But when in doubt, I would definitely say you're going to want to go and take footage yourself and not rely on drone footage. One tip I will give you as far as just your video editing, on the video editing side, if you feel like you want to highlight something and you're not sure if there's drone footage, don't wait until after you've done the video. I know it kind of seems like a silly tip, but don't wait until you've done the video and then come back to look for drone footage. I would do it in the opposite order because I've had some people who have come back and they've done this big, great video, and then they've dedicated a section of their video to like voiceover or something. And they're like, okay, well, now I want you to put this drone footage, find this type of drone footage and put it over. Well, unfortunately, we don't have access to that particular clip that they're looking for, or it's not available on the depositories that we have. And then we have a little bit of a problem at that point, right? So when in doubt, I would definitely take drone footage yourself, or I would do a search ahead of time before you have a video that you're going to produce. Like I said, there's lots of different places that you can find drone footage, lots more than there ever used to be. It's definitely blown up in the past couple of years. Drone footage has become really important. Now, another tip. Do not take footage that you find on YouTube because you think that it's open use, because that fair use is used very, very loosely. And more often than not, one, you're either going to get called out on it by the actual creator, or two, YouTube's going to call you out for them, which I have definitely seen. Now, it's not that big of a deal. Ultimately, it will just mean that you have a copyright claim on your video, and you just won't be able to monetize that video. So it's not like you're going to get your channel destroyed or whatever. Now, if you get multiple accounts against the same account and they've asked you to take things down, that's when things get dicey. And so that's why I always say, when in doubt, always get your own or get a commercially licensed clip. Do not take other people's clips off of YouTube, even if you feel like it's fair use. Generally speaking, especially with drone footage is a little bit more protected than other footage, just because it does take a license for people to get up there. And many of these people do that for a living, which is why their drone footage is even on YouTube to begin with. Is because they're trying to lead generate for their business and bring in clientele for their drone footage. So I would be very cautious, and I would really recommend not taking any type of video footage off of YouTube without explicit permission. And even then, I'm sure they're going to want to credit you visually on the screen and not just in the description, so that it's obvious where you got the footage from. But if you're using commercial footage with a license, you're not going to run into that problem. So that's why I always say, to be safe, go with a commercial clip. Let's see. I have a Mavic Pro and I've had it for about 4 years. Yeah, there's a lot of, and that's a great thing too. Drones come in all shapes and sizes and all price points, and it's usually pretty easy to find a good one. I mean, there's some that people swear by. I have to remember what version I have. We have one that we got off of Amazon. It has 4K footage and it's really, really nice. But they've got some that are in the $1,000 to $2,000 range. They've got some that are, $100 to $200. They've got some anywhere in between that. So usually drones are not that expensive, and it's kind of fun to learn how to do new footage. And then, you can use your own footage and you never have to worry about somebody coming back and trying to say that you stole their footage, I am building a library from listings I have drone footage. Yeah, see, that's fantastic. I think, again, it just gives you an opportunity to reuse those clips. You have complete control over what you have and what you don't have. It's just, and another great thing about that too, is we always talk about creating unique content. And that is a huge factor in your ranking, is having unique content. If you have drone footage that nobody else has because you've taken it yourself, think about how valuable that is. If somebody else is able to use the same clip, which doesn't happen very often. I haven't really seen a whole lot of overlap there, but as more videos get onto YouTube, you never know, right? If you're using a clip that no one else has ever used before because you own it and you created it yourself, think about how much more valuable that's going to be for the end user. That's just one extra element that you can add to be more competitive than the next guy next to you, right? Because you're not just using commercial shots that somebody else took and that 1,000 other people have used. You're using something that's unique to you and your channel. Awesome. Any other questions today, guys? I know we've kind of like blitzed through this today. I've been answering lots of questions and we've kind of done rapid fire from the very beginning. I'm going to go back and make sure I didn't miss any at the very beginning. Let's see. Got lots of good afternoons. Good afternoon to you. Let's see. I think we got to all of the questions here. Any other last minute questions? If not, we're almost to the top of the hour, believe it or not. And so we'll go ahead and wrap up if we don't have any other questions. Just a reminder for everybody who's here, make sure, again, if you want to submit, we will have Levi back with us next week. We can do some more channel reviews. I can always do those while he's gone too, but I like to take a little bit of a break from them just so that we have a chance to go through these really awesome questions too, because I want to make sure people are getting their questions answered rather than just doing channel reviews every time. But next week, I think we're going to go ahead and do channel reviews again. So if you want to participate in that, just make sure that you send us a direct link to your channel underneath the event that's actually on Facebook. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to see it. And I apologize for anybody who messages me on Facebook or Instagram. I just have so many messages come in there every single day. It's very unlikely that I'm going to see it. I try to clear those out once a week, but it's, yeah, that's probably the worst way to get a hold of me. So I apologize if anybody's messaged me there. If you do have questions, support@passiveprospecting.com is I man the booth on that. And so that's the best and fastest way to get a hold of me. Facebook and Instagram Messenger, you're probably same with Levi. He's so inundated with messages. He just it's really hard for him to get through all of those messages throughout the week. So I would recommend either doing that in the group. For those of us who are in the course, make sure that you check us out on School. You can message us there as well. And for those of you who have not tried to do the course with us, you definitely want to do that. Based on everything that we've talked about today, this is just scratching the surface of all of the things that you can do to make your videos rank on YouTube. So we'd love to help you be able to create a lead generating YouTube channel using the course. And so the Passive Prospecting course, all you got to do is go to passiveprospecting.com. And I should have put that in my name, just like Levi does. He makes that really fancy when he's on here. But just go to passiveprospecting.com. I'll put the link to that in the chat. And you can check that out. You can also check out our video editing services. If you're trying to get your videos up there, but you don't want to do the editing, we can do that all for you. So we have an info call that you can hop on, and that is also with me. And you can ask any questions that you have about the video editing process and what that looks like. We also have a book coming out here pretty soon. That's really exciting. That's going to be coming out in March. So you can get on the wait list for that so that you'll know when that comes out. Levi and Travis worked really, really hard on that. And we're really excited to release that and help everybody here in that way as well. So with that being said, thank you for joining us today. And we will plan on talking to you on one of our next calls. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.